Hi, it's Jane from Allotment Cooks. I am in the kitchen and as promised earlier I am going to be making beetroot falafel. So I have done a little bit of preparation before I get started just because otherwise it gets so messy. I'm also only going to be doing half of the ultimate amount that I will be doing, one at a time, basically because I only have a really small food blender, but I will be doing actually the whole recipe and have lots of falafel. So starting off with 500 grams of grated beetroot. I have 2 cans of 400 grams of chickpeas, nicely drained, and I have retained the liquid as well because I'm quite eager to try out vegan meringues which uses the water from chickpea cans. We have 100 grams of fresh breadcrumbs, 1 onion on this one, although 2 onions in total for the whole recipe, and 2 teaspoons of cumin. Now in addition to that I've also got some olive oil and I have some toasted sesame oil. Now most recipes will actually use tahini, but I always find it impossible to get hold of, so I use this as a substitute. What you often find as well with falafel is they will use egg. However, I want this to be a vegan one, so I'm not going to be using egg, and eggs are only there really as a binding agent. So it may be a case of just using a little bit more of this oil just to make sure that when I'm forming the little falafels or the tiny patties, they will actually stay together. So the first thing I need to do is actually, in a little bit of olive oil, cook off the onions ever so slightly with a little bit of the cumin, and that's really important to actually cook off the cumin, otherwise you get this quite gloopy flavour with it. So that's what I'm going to do first. Okay, so quite simply all I'm going to do is, if I was doing this as the whole recipe with all the measurements, I would be doing a tablespoon of olive oil. I'm only sort of doing half at a time, so half of that in there. I'm then going to need 1 teaspoon of cumin. I'm going to put the heat on. Now the reason why olive oil is really important for this one is because olive oil actually has a lower cooking point than sunflower oil. So if you use sunflower oil, you actually have to get a higher heat in order to start cooking the onion, and what would happen then is, rather than getting it nicely browned, you could actually risk ending up with burnt onion, and you're not after a burnt onion flavour with this one. You're after it just being a little bit soft and obviously having that cumin nicely cooked off as well. So I'm just going to literally sweat these down so they're a bit softer, and then they'll actually go into the whole mix with everything else. So I'll show you that in just a little bit. So that's my onions just ever so slightly cooked, and the cumin in there has been cooked out as well. It already smells absolutely amazing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put these onions and the cumin into the food processor, just straight from the pan. In they go. There we are. And then that's going to be followed by half, not all, of the beetroot. So pan here, just sort of gauge it for yourselves. And this is because obviously this is going to be blitzed, but you still do want a little bit of evidence that it is beetroot in there. You don't want it completely pureed. You do actually want some beetroot. And then that's followed by the chickpeas. So there we go. And I'm going to blitz that first. I will add the breadcrumbs in a little bit, but I'm going to give that a bit of a blitz first. Get this on. Come on. There we go. Okay, here we go. Maybe pulse it a little. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in those breadcrumbs as well. Let's just give this a little bit of a stir. And I can tell, even though we've got the really juicy beetroot in here, it is actually quite a dry mix, so that's why you would normally have the egg in here. Quite often the breadcrumbs also add to that binding element, because again, they are a binding agent. That's what their job is in this dish. Here we go again. Just like this. Let's pulse it again. Now it is dry, so I'm going to have some of my sesame oil. Now this is actually quite strong, so you don't really want too much of this, especially because it is toasted, and again it's just possibly going to add to that burnt flavour, which you don't want a burnt flavour. So just putting about a tablespoon there. You can see it's all now starting to really come together. That's looking a bit better than it was. Let's just mix it a little bit, just get a little bit of that in. Yeah, much better. So there's a bit more liquid in there. I might add in a little bit more oil, but not any more of the sesame oil because it would be too strong. So I'm probably going to go for a little bit of the olive oil. Going to do this as it's going, so I can gauge just by looking at it how juicy it is. Beetroot's quite a juicy veg anyway, but we've got those dry chickpeas in there as well as the breadcrumbs. So that's possibly about half a tablespoon there. I can see the liquid actually sort of forming around the bottom here. So let's just turn that off for a moment, just to give it a little bit of a stir. Actually, yeah, I can see, just being careful of the blade, that is actually quite good. But I have to remember that I've still got the rest of that beetroot to add in as well. So it may be a case of having to add in a bit more oil. So this one is not strictly going to be that's how much oil you need, because it does depend on just how liquidy or juicy your beetroots are. And different beetroots will have different water contents. It's a bit like when you are making things with flour. Different flours have different saturation points. Okay, so got the rest of the chopped or grated beetroot in there. This is where I'm going to end up with extremely red hands. Lovely. There we go. And just, it smells really good. I'm just going to mix that in. I can smell the toasted sesame oil, but it's not too overbearing, so that's absolutely fine. Okay, so just mixing that together. Now what we'll need to do next is actually form the little falafels. So with this mixture, we should get, sort of with half of it, should get about 10 falafels. Depends on the size that you want really, as to what you want to have. So let's just move those to the side. Now what I'm going to do is I have a baking tray with some greaseproof paper on, and then I'm just going to form little falafels. So you can do them as balls, but actually I quite like my falafels a little bit flat. If you wanted to use a teaspoon for this, so that you can sort of have more or less the same size, if you like a uniform kind of thing, you can do. I like the rustic look though, which is probably quite handy. And then just push it down. So you could just do the balls and then pat them down with your fingers, and these are actually forming quite nicely on there. Okay, so once you've done this, what you need to do next is you'll actually chill them. So you'll pop them in the fridge for about 10 minutes for them to chill. Sorry, itchy nose. For them to chill, and it actually means that they relax a little bit and they should hold their shape better. Now usually with falafel, you sort of spray them with oil or coat them in oil and pop them in the oven, but I'm really aware that I haven't used egg as a binding agent on this one, so it could be, and this is a bit of a tester, it could be that these ones might be better off in a little frying pan. So this is going to be a test because I do want to keep these vegan. I don't want to put the egg in them. So actually we've got 6, 7, 8 so far, 9, so I said 10. Obviously I'm being maybe a little bit mean with the size of my falafels here. Another one. Whoop. I don't think I'm being mean, I think they're quite a good size actually. Okay, so I'm going to finish doing that, and then I'm going to pop these in the fridge for about 10 minutes, and then I'm going to come back, I'm going to pop them in the oven, and we'll see how they do once they're actually baked. So they have been chilled in the fridge for about 5 or 10 minutes, and what I need to do now is actually bake them. So rather than actually brushing on some oil, I'm actually just going to use some oil spray. So I'm just going to lift them up, give them a little spray on either side, like this, and then in a moment they're going to go into the oven. Now the oven is 200 C or 180 on my fan oven, and they are going to go in the oven for around 25 minutes. So as I said, this one is a bit of an experiment because there's no egg in this one, so it will be really interesting to see when they come out if they have actually held their shape, or if ideally maybe they might need to be fried in a pan. We will see. What I would suggest though is if you wanted to make up a batch like this and you want to freeze some, is I would actually still suggest cooking them before you freeze them. And the reason for that is purely and simply because if you freeze them and then defrost them ready to cook, they are more likely to actually lose their shape in the defrosting, whereas if you've already cooked them, you've almost seared both sides, so they should hold their shape better. So we'll see in about 25 minutes my time, a bit quicker your time, how these do when they come out of the oven. Okay, so the falafel has now been in the oven for about 20-25 minutes, so I'm going to pull them out. I'm going to basically see if they have actually held their shape really well by being oven baked rather than pan baked, because remember, these haven't got egg in them, they are vegan, and egg is the binding ingredient. It doesn't add flavour, it is just to bind. So looking at these, the tops are looking quite good. So what I'm going to do is, I'm not sure how well they're going to come off. Ooh, they look quite well actually. There we go, just pop them. 1, 2, 3. Just on there with a little bit of lovely salad leaves from the allotment. Now obviously if you have some decent leaves with your beetroot, beetroot leaves. Nothing wrong with beetroot and beetroot, or beetroot and beetroot, because I also have here is my beetroot chutney, which is just amazing. The recipe for this is on Pinterest, it's on the website, or just ask me, I'll post it, that's absolutely fine. It is a really good one. So I'm just, because I've got the earthiness from these falafel with the cumin as well, I'm going to add a bit of sweetness with the beetroot chutney. So I'm going to give these a try and see. They hold the shape really well. Yum. That's really good. I'm just going to try it with a little bit of that chutney as well. Oh my god. Yeah, that is amazing. If you're not sure what to do with beetroot and you're a bit fed up of just pickling it, this is really, really worth a try. I mean, amazing. If you're back at work in the office, treat yourself, make up a whacking batch, take it in as lunch, or if you're having people over for dinner, family, maybe meeting them up for the first time in absolutely ages, this is a really nice little starter actually. Yum. Right, I'm going to stop the video because I am going to be helping myself and dipping into this. So the recipe has probably made up about 25, 30 falafel, depending on the size of them. So yeah, make up a nice little batch of beetroot falafel. Let me know what you think. They're amazing. Take care.